Welcome back to Let's Talk Race and Ireland. I'm your host, Harrison Paul, and today we're going to talk about this young girl. She did some Irish dancing, a young black girl. I'm not sure she's African-Irish, but she sounds African-American. And she did some Irish dancing. She mixed it with some hip-hop. She flared it up a little bit. And of course, the racists came out and had an issue with it. Now, of course, I know a lot of people in Ireland will feel like, oh, what are they complaining about? Whatever. So we're not going to focus too much on the actual negative response that this girl got on the video, because we know that really only an idiot would have a problem with it. But we're going to talk about in general what issue Ireland is having with accepting, this multicultural, this diverse new Ireland that's being formed. And I feel like there's a very redneck mentality that's taking place. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Europeans, and I think that's why there's been a failure in the education system within Ireland, because we have not educated people within Ireland about Ireland's history of, I want to say moving or conquering other places. I've seen so much comments of people saying we never conquered anybody, and I think it's such a shame to see that it's so void from our education system. That Ireland, of course, you know us to be backpackers, you know us to be people who went and traveled, but there's a lot of colonial involvement within the Irish, and a lot of benefit from the Atlantic slave trade and all sorts of things. It's not small amount. And even when we talk about Jamaica, that's not something that's taught in school. The Irish really were a huge factor in Jamaica and conquering Africans after the small period of indentured servitude had ended. A lot of them went into power and actually became slave owners. And of course, using the money they would have earned to fund their home cities and rebuild their countries and their cities back home, not countries, cities back home. So there's this idea that Ireland didn't benefit at all. It's very ignorant. And I can see that they're not understanding that now, as life is going a full circle, it is, I guess, their duty and their, only right that they understand that their country is now to become a diverse country. How else do I say that? If we think about countries like America, America can't turn back on what it did and now look for this, I guess, non-diverse America. America is a diverse country because of the history that it is. So if you look at a country like, let's say, Iceland, for example, somewhere like that could probably keep their purebred culture because they have no real involvement. Now, listen, I'm not going to say anything definitive. Why? Because you probably didn't know that the Irish had anything, any benefits of it. And I'm going to put up on the screen for you guys to see it. There's an historian called Liam Hogan who I've learned so much from, and I want to shout out to him again. But I learned so much about Ireland's involvement. So I don't want to speak too soon because there probably is a Liam Hogan from Iceland who has discovered all Iceland benefited from, just kind of going out into the global south and popularizing it. Now, listen, we're going to play the video of the girl dancing, and I think she did an interview as well. We're just going to play it and check it out.
The video has been viewed about 1.6 million times. It's drawn more than 1.3 thousand comments as well from people. What's been the reaction, Caitlin, to the video?
It's been very mixed. I've had so much support, but also there's been a lot of racist comments underneath the video, which has definitely been shocking. I've had a lot of go back to your country and a lot of this isn't Irish dancing, which has been crazy.
And why do you think that is? Is it that people looking at the type of dance that you've created and the choreography, I suppose they don't see it in the same way as they do the traditional Irish dance that we might be used to?
It's definitely, when I fuse different styles, there's definitely like a difference. Like I'll use my arms instead of keeping my arms down. But also I'll have all of the normal like footwork of Irish dancing, and I'll still make sure the technique is there. So I think a lot of people aren't used to seeing arms moved with it, as well as the type of music that I use.
I hope this doesn't take away, though, from your love of Irish dancing, Caitlin.
Oh, absolutely not. I still love it so much. ever since I was little, it's always been something that's been very special to me. And like, there's just something special about it, and it makes me really happy to continue Irish dancing.
Wonderful. Caitlin, that's wonderful. Now, we're not going to talk about idiots. That's an Irish word for idiots for anybody who doesn't, who's from abroad who doesn't know. We're not going to talk about idiots because idiots are a waste of time. Like, I remember when the England boys, missed the penalties and then obviously you had the racist people who made accounts and stuff like that. Although when you really are, a host of a page that fights racism like I am right now, you get to really see that there's a lot more idiots than you would have imagined. But I don't like the concept of us just thinking it's the idiots because there are a lot of, kind of like put together, high earning people who hold very much the same mindsets, but they just understand that I'm not going to be silly enough to make a fake account and go. I don't have that kind of a time. I don't have that kind of time. But nonetheless, they share a lot of similarities in their mentalities. But if there's one thing I want to give to the black person for you to understand, I can't lie and say I've not gone through a phase of feeling towards the Irish that, do I feel bad that they want to hold on to the thoroughbred within their culture. And I've tried to, because that's just my evidence. I'm definitely trying to see it from their side. I also want it to be known. I put up on the screen that Ireland actually has one of the oldest diaspora, Irish diaspora within Zimbabwe. I always say this. My mother went to school with Irish girls within Zimbabwe when it was Rhodesia. They were helping the British fight against Zimbabweans getting their independence. The Irish people have gone into rural areas within Africa. There's Irish roads within Zimbabwe. There's Clonsilla, there's Kildare, there's loads of different Irish places. You can be sure to find, even in South Africa, Irish places. And this is, going back in apartheid. They're not void of finding where there was benefit, finding where there was a jackpot, finding where there was soil and land that they could farm. And there's a lot of farmers there. Even my cousin was telling me, who lives in Zimbabwe, there's a lot of Irish people here. And they go into the rural areas and they make that place Ireland. That's one thing you can be sure about Irish. Irish will go to wherever and find and make an Irish pub and make an Irish community. In fact, I was speaking to a young man here in where I live, and he was actually saying how I was just having a chat. We noticed each other's Irish accents. I think I was talking to one of my friends, and we noticed. I was like, "You Irish?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm Irish." Yeah, I think he asked me. And we had a chat and everything like that. And I think one day he had a GA jersey on. Anybody who doesn't know, GAA jerseys, it's one of the Irish sports. He goes, yeah, I play GA out here. I'm like, you play GA out here? He's like, yeah. And it's like, just thought maybe a few lads. Like, no, there's a full-on league. There's a league. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm in the UK at the moment. So like, there's a full-on, I was like, a league? That's kind of intense. You know what I mean? How do you get that much people? It just shows that they're so self-determined that they will bring, Ireland wherever they are because they love themselves that much. But the African, is the only person that people have a problem him bringing his culture anywhere or anywhere else like that in the global south. But my thing is this that I want them to understand is that there is no place they, I guess, deserve to keep off limits. Because that's how life, that's a circle of life now. You know what I mean? They have a history of people. It's on the documents that they went across the world and they brought Ireland across the world, and they especially to places like South Africa and Zimbabwe, especially where they could farm. As you know, Irish people are farmers. And this idea that you want to now gatekeep your country for yourself, unfortunately, history doesn't allow for you to do that in this current day because of the way your ancestors behaved. And unfortunately, a lot of you will be uneducated and feel like I'm saying, what are you talking about? We didn't do anything like that. which I don't really have time for. Like I said, I'll put a little bit of a clip. You can click some sort of a link here on how to find out more about this and educate yourself on how Ireland kind of benefited from stuff like imperialism. But this is the point I want to get to today. One of the main things that I learned about moving abroad when I was growing up in Ireland and I moved to North America, I want you to know, this is for the African and this is for the Irish, that a diverse life, it does not sacrifice your cultures. I remember I was in Canada and they had a strong culture they had poutine, something called poutine or something like that. Basically, they had a lot of Quebecer cultures that were there. And if anybody knows Canada, Canada is a very diverse, and I lived there for some time, land, diverse people from all sorts, Chinese Canadians, all sorts of Canadians. But it didn't damage the heart of what Canadian culture is, you know what I mean? And that was still there, and people celebrated that culture. But I want the Irish to know, if any Irish will take time to listen to this, that diversity is not your enemy. Diversity is not your enemy. If there's one thing that I learned from when I moved to North America, is that within Ireland, because diversity is not as heavy, it's not as, I guess, prominent, there's a heavy spirit of, like being a sheep, being boxed into, if you do something unorthodox, you're weird, you're strange. And it cripples even the Irish. I cannot tell you how much conversations I had with, because I've always been like a motivator. I've always been a guy who sees something in somebody and point it out and be like, bro, you should go and do this. That's one of my skills. I can't tell you how much times when I used to drink, when I used to be out on the session, as they call it, and you'd be talking to somebody, you'd be like, yo, man, like, you got this skill. I noticed. She was like, you know what, man, I've always wanted to do it. I just thought I'd be weird if I did it, And that was one of the things Conor McGregor rallied. It was like, no, I didn't see anybody do what I did. I didn't see anybody do it. And I'm not a fan of Conor, but, I think he was also alluding to, like, in Ireland, when you want to do something that no one else is seeing, is play football or work on the sites, it's very hard not only to actually go and do it, but to actually be okay with being someone who's different. That is something that even cripples. I can't tell you how much times I've spoken to Irish people like, can I wear that? You think that looks good on me? Go and do it. And then they'll be like, I want to wear it. Actually, nah, I don't know if I can deal with that. I was raised now with loads of people who were kind of like told me on the down low, because that's one of the things. And I remember I received a lovely message from somebody growing up. I remember that they kind of said a lovely message to me. Said, Harrison, you know what? I was doing what I'm doing now. And she said, oh, Harrison, well done what you're doing. You're someone who always exuded individuality. It's probably something, as you can see, it stuck with me till this day. And it was early when I started doing it. And it's because you're someone who exuded individuality. And I really like that, because as a black boy, of course, you're diverse. I'm diverse. So I was just being myself, and I had the courage to be myself. I had the courage to be that. And I think the comment was like, someone who obviously knew me for a while was like, you've always been the guy to do something that we would always, in our hometown have a comment about, like, what's he doing now? You know what I mean? What's he wearing now? What's that kind of behavior now? And eventually, fortunate for me, and by the grace of God, I had moments to back them up. I had major moments of success in music where they're like, okay, I think being a weirdo has worked for us. I think being different and being, unorthodox has worked for him. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, I had those moments where God backed me, like, okay, I think the kid might know something, But I remember when people, especially in my height of when I was kind of like doing music and I was doing well, really well, people be like, man, I wish I could see this. Sometimes people in certain Irish people's eyes, I wish I could do what you do, And I could feel like, but I'm boxed into this, you know what I mean? And I spoke to someone, a man called Paul, actually. He's from Ireland. I don't know. I'm not going to give his full name, but we were having a chat about, even he loved drama growing up. And he said, if you're not doing sports, if you're not doing certain things, even being a kid that liked drama was difficult. And I was like, that's typical Irish culture. And one of the things I learned when I moved abroad was just watching everybody be so diverse and be free. And I think that was when I found my feet as a man. You know, I was 19 going 20, I was growing up, and really that was the moment I can remember myself honestly flourishing. And it was earlier when I was living in America for some time, and then it was really in Toronto I felt my shoulders kind of broaden and my head lift high, because I felt like, you know, you're not in that boxed mindset anymore. It's like, nah, they got all the boys, I'm not gonna say anything about you. You know, like, there's so many people. You see someone walking down the street with a crazy hairdo. You see someone walking down with a crazy dress. You meet people at a party, and you're like, you know, diverse people who are, yeah, man, I design this. I'm a designer. I do that, and they're really successful doing that thing. And you get to then see a window into people doing great success and doing things. I remember, like, you know, just different stuff. You meet someone at a party, and it's like, yeah, I designed for this and that. And like, wow, you made a career out of your strangeness, you know, your unorthodox identity. And then it just makes you feel free. I don't know how to say it, you know? And that's, if there's one thing I know the Irish people are starved from, and it seems like people want to keep them in that box, is that your children will benefit. Your children will benefit from having that free and diverse world that they live in, where, you know what I mean, like, an Irish kid can find himself doing something, and then they can go on to do things where it's like, an Irishman did that movie, an Irishman did that. And not to say that there isn't Irish people who go on and do great things, but I mean, like, that's why America is like the land of opportunity. You know what I mean? Like New York, as they would say. I don't know if people hope to make it in New York, and I'm not saying that you have to take away the culture and the slowed down lifestyle, and I'm not saying that. I'm just speaking for the minds of the Irish, how beneficial it will be for you guys to kind of, like, I don't know how to say it, like, for your kids to have the freedom. And I think if you were to have a real conversation with Conor McGregor, I can say, like, he expanded past being an Irish celeb to being a worldwide global star. And I think he's actually doing his people a disservice by not telling him, guys, there's a real world out there. You know, there's a real world out there. And a lot of times we box ourselves in because we are this small island and stuff like that. And but I feel like the diversity, and I remember when I would interact with certain boys, because I was black, did certain things about my identity would rub off on them, and I could see that they'd find themselves in a new way of, like, you know, I'm gonna throw my shoulders a little bit in this area. I'm gonna, you know, be a little bit different and than anyone else. And that's one of the things I feel harms the Irish. And we actually then imprison each other, and we how do I say it? We police each other, like, oh, he's what's he doing, or what's she doing, or, because obviously there's a lot of small towns, and you have that small town, you know what I mean, like, syndrome, where people are just kind of like, oh, you don't wear your jeans like that, or don't wear your dress like that, or don't wear your t-shirt like that, or don't go out like that, you know. And that is probably one of the things that cripple a lot of people, who I'm like, you know what? I remember there was something special in you, but you wouldn't allow yourself to live in that truth, because the atmosphere around you was like, oh no, I don't want to be the sore thumb, you know, in that environment. But that's why other places can create people who go on to do stuff that are monumental. James Brown, Michael Jackson. These are just putting out my stuff. Beyonce, you know, like, naming out black people, but, you know, all sorts. Even you can talk about your white movie star, whatever you want to talk about. Even people who do different stuff like architecture, design, all that kind of stuff. The freedom to dream, the freedom to become, the freedom to explore is something I feel that Ireland are scared for the place that they're going in the diversity. But actually, I can tell you, your children will be a lot happier, will be a lot more free. I can tell you there are so many children who sat dreaming and hoping and let their dream die without resuscitating it, because it was like, I'd rather do something that will make sense to the ones around me. And I always I wrote a status, and I'm gonna read it to you, and then I'll end it on this. And I was actually alluding to this in this status, but check this out. I said, funny how the Irish narrative changed to people are moving abroad because there's nothing here for them because of foreigners. When I was growing up, people left based off the fact they felt the country lacked diversity in lifestyle, diversity in opportunities. They wanted to see bigger cities or interesting cultures, maybe chasing the sun and some waves. People left to explore and complained about how they felt Ireland or Selbridge, that's where I grew up, or whatever small town you came from was repetitive. In fact, the brave backpackers would always be admired by the ones back home for their bravery and curious spirit, updating everyone back home on the fascinating cultures they are getting to experience, expanding as a person. With that being said, they love a good visit home and enjoy mom's cooking, but people were happier with their more exciting and diverse lives. Now all of a sudden we're changing that narrative in order to guilt trip foreigners. This is gas and seriously wicked, but also gas. Happy Good Friday, folks. Christ is an honest king. So that's how you see. I was kind of alluding to that and saying, guys, diversity is coming to your country, and that diversity of thinking, that diversity of being, it's not only going to be, let's say, things like talent. It will also be like fixing world problems. We'll be known for being people that fix world problems. I don't know how to tell you, but anybody who's traveled, when you touch down in America, when you touch down in countries like that, you feel like a bird with your wings wide, because it's like there's so much going on in that you're like, you become this little dot, and you're not overthinking what he or she or they may say in that herd mentality. You're now like, I'm in the city of dreams. You know what I mean? And like I said, I understand people like minimal and want culturally minimal things. I'm not saying it has to change. It definitely does not have to change. And that's what countrysides are for. But this idea where it's like, I can just feel this tug for people to say, we want to stay small-minded. We want to stay boxed in. We love, unless you're wearing a Nike tracksuit or this, we want it to stay that way. Unless you're wearing some wellies. No, I'll wear my wellies. You can wear your African attire. I'll wear my Nike tracksuit. You can wear your African attire. Trust me, that type of mentality, you become somebody way bigger than your small little box, that small little parameter of your life. And you, I guess, instantly and ultimately become a more intelligent person. You become more intelligent because your scope is not just here. You now balance life from, okay, I'm understanding the species in this world and this life a lot better. So anyway, to this girl, that's just the saying that I will give to the Irish people. Diversity is not a negative thing. So thank you all for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And I'm on a mission for you.